We're talking Senior Bowl and, of course, all things New York Giants with special guest Justin Penik. You know him from Talking Giants, the podcast. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Patricia Traina here with you, and happy Thursday to everybody. We have the first of two big shows, one today, one tomorrow. Coming up on today's show live, well, actually not live, but from Mobile, Alabama, the site of the Senior Bowl, I have Justin Penik on the show. Justin is one half of the Talking Giants podcast duo, and you guys and gals have probably seen Bobby Skinner on the show a few times. So Justin is actually making his debut here on the Locked On Giants podcast, and he's going to offer up his thoughts on what he's seen. We're going to talk a little bit about the Giants and what's transpired there. So it should be a good conversation, I think, coming up. Today's show, by the way, is brought to you in part by Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. And also, folks, thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you're watching us on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Now, I also mentioned we have two big shows to close out the week. In addition to the interview with Justin Penik, we have we're going live on Friday, 11 a.m. We're going to kick it off. I'm going to have the entertainer on. So we are going to go live. We'll take your questions. We'll talk Giants. Again, everything that's transpired. Always a fun show when Chris comes on, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I hope you guys and gals will be able to join us. We're probably going to go about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how things go. And bring your questions, obviously, and stop by. We'd love to hear from you guys and gals. So, all right, with that said, let's get into the interview with Justin Penik, who comes to us from Mobile, Alabama, site of the Senior Bowl. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. And as promised, I am joined for the first time by the one, the only Justin Penik. And he is one half of the Talking Giants duo with Bobby Skinner. We've had Bobby on the program a few times. This is Justin's debut here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So excited to have him with us. Justin, how you doing, my friend?
Patty, I'm coming to you from Mobile, Alabama, in a hotel room at the Senior Bowl. I'm actually in my friend's hotel room, not even in my own room, because in my own room, we got another podcast going for our Talking Football channel, doing a little bit of a recap from Senior Bowl. So a lot of content, a lot of things that we're putting out, Giants and football stuff. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on. Good week at Senior Bowl in Alabama. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited to hear about the Senior Bowl. I, of course, am not down there, unfortunately. I'm down there in spirit, but, you know, and I've had the virtual access to the film. But, you know, first, before we get to the Senior Bowl, Justin, let's talk about what's been going on with the Giants. Now, you know, Brian Daboll hired as the head coach. I actually like this decision. I want to get your take on it, what you like about it. And I know you did a lot of research, I think, on Brian Daboll. So I want to hear what you have to say about the whole move.
Yeah, so Brian Daboll was the candidate that just flat out excited me the most. I mean, you can never predict, black and white of just, is a guy going to be great or is a guy going to fail? I feel like you can never really predict that. But out of all the head coaching candidates that we had this cycle, he was just the guy that excited me the most. And I think you kind of look at the trends of the NFL and kind of what's going on right now. I think you're seeing a lot of good defensive coordinators that are kind of coming out of left field, and they're kind of just coming up. Patrick Graham was a defense coordinator of one of the worst defenses in football in 2019. They allowed explosive play after explosive play, comes with the Giants, and he's getting head coaching interviews in 2020 and also in 2021. You're seeing DeMeco Ryans is a guy that came up, former player. I remember playing with him in Madden growing up, and now, he's a guy that was getting head coaching candidates this offseason. So trends of the NFL, defensive coordinators, they can kind of come up, but those offensive coordinators and those offensive play callers may be a little bit more harder to find. So Brian Daboll, coming in with that really explosive, awesome offense from Buffalo, trying to see if we can untap and get this Giants offense going, since really for a very, very long time, this Giants offense just has not been up to par in terms of scoring points at somewhat of an above average rate in the National Football League. And it is an explosive play, and it is an offensive league where you do have to score some points.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you look at the work that he's done, or his offense has done with Josh Allen, the quarterback up there. When Josh Allen first came out, I think there were some questions as to whether or not he could become, a really good quarterback. And he has, of course, evolved into one. And pretty much you can tell with the hiring of Brian Daboll that the Giants are all in on Daniel Jones. No surprise there. John Mara has said it numerous times. Pretty obvious that that's what they're looking to do. I know you've also studied a little bit about the type of offense he runs. I've done some work on that as well. Matter of fact, on Giants Country, I have an article up that I did on Wednesday about about the type of offense he runs. He runs primarily 11 personnel. That's the majority of the offense that Buffalo ran, and for numerous reasons. And of course, tomorrow, or actually today, Thursday, on Giants Country, we have another article with specific plays, 3 plays that Coach Gene Clemens outlined. But let me get your take on what you've seen. When you look at the film of the Buffalo offense, what really excites you? What do you think can translate really well with the Giants, given the skilled position players they have?
Yeah, so one of the things that the Bills love to run, now it helps when you do have Josh Allen, but I'll get to the whole Josh Allen, the impact and presence of Josh Allen being such an elite quarterback. What does that mean for Brian Daboll? We can maybe even talk about that because I think that's an interesting conversation. But what Buffalo really likes to run, they love to run crossing routes. And I'm a big fan of running those crossing routes over the middle of the field. The Giants played cover 1 and they played against man coverage so often these last 2 years because Jason Garrett's offense and this Giants offense in general, they had a lot of trouble producing big plays. So what teams are going to do, they're going to put more guys by the line of scrimmage. They're not going to trust and they're not going to give you any credit for your ability to throw the ball deep or produce the big plays. So why should we put a bunch of guys in coverage when we don't think that you can do it to begin with? So those crossing routes, if teams want to play man coverage against us next year, those crossing routes are going to be an awesome way to kind of defeat man coverage. And Brian Daboll did a great job of running those. And Josh Allen is also the type of quarterback that can throw from different arm angles. He has the arm strength and he has the improvisation to deliver a ball on those crossing routes going across the field, but also just a little bit outside the X's and O's, but it still does relate to some X's and O's. Brian Daboll has evolved. You mentioned the word evolved, how Josh Allen has evolved. Daboll himself and the system that he ran in Buffalo, that evolved over time as well. There's a really good Athletic article by Robert Mays where it's long and it's detailed, but really details how Daboll was almost a stubborn coach, very kind of set in his ways. And I think you've seen some of the, Belichick disciples over the years that have kind of come out of New England, how they have been kind of stubborn, stuck to their ways. And Daboll was out of New England for a long time. But I think in Buffalo, he kind of looked at himself in the mirror, looking at what he's got. And especially as they added more talent in Buffalo, how can I make this work? How can I make this work? Daboll has been in the NFL for 20 plus years, and he had some previous stints as offense coordinator with the Dolphins that, it didn't go exactly perfectly according to plan. Looked at himself in the mirror. How can I create an offense that is directed towards the player's strengths? He did that. He implemented that. He got the players' input and he kind of implemented that kind of offense where it was shaped around the player's strengths. And you heard him talk a lot about that during his opening press conference, which really entices me.
Yeah, that, and also he's a people person, which is important. You can't come in and be, a bull in a china shop.
Yeah. My way or the highway.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. Now, one thing that Brian Daboll said that caught my ear, and I want to ask you about this. I want to see what you might think. I'm going to ask you to put yourself in Daniel Jones's head for a minute here. Brian Daboll said that he gave Daniel a bit of a homework assignment. He said, within a couple weeks, come back to me with some things that you like to do, whether it be from your time here at the Giants or going back from your time at Duke. What do you think might be some of those things that Brian Daboll can maybe take and incorporate into an offensive system to get the most out of Daniel Jones?
I mean, really, it's going back to 2019, at least for me, because I think Pat Shurmur was the coach and the play caller, for Daniel Jones that did the best job of that. We're really making things for Daniel simple in 2019, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that for a rookie quarterback. And I think what happened with Jason Garrett is it was a little bit more accelerated, where we're putting a lot more in front of you, a lot more pre-snap reads, a lot more post-snap processing too, where you kind of have to make a decision. So high to low reads is something that Pat Shurmur really implemented with Daniel Jones. We're starting off, we're looking towards a deep part of the field, and then we're working our way back down towards the line of scrimmage. I think that's partially why Caden Smith was so productive at the end of the 2019 season. You saw the chemistry between him and Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones likes to kind of check down to the middle of the field. It's kind of rare. You don't see Daniel Jones doing what Eli Manning did a lot towards the latter end of his career, where he's turning his body and checking it down to the running back whenever things kind of break down. Daniel Jones doesn't turn his body a lot. He kind of just sticks to the middle of the field. Okay, I'm going to check it down to my tight end or whoever's in the middle of the field. So I think implementing a lot of that high to low read stuff. And also, I know this is a tricky subject, but I think Daniel Jones is a different quarterback when he's able to run the ball and when he's able to use his legs. Now, I'm not talking about really being mobile in the pocket, but when he has the ball in his hands, it is an element of explosivity that this offense really does need. It's just learning how to slide. And I've heard you say that before. Learn how to slide and learn when to just, hey, let's throw this play away. We'll live another down. And that's something that they could have done in that Eagles game where there's not much of a gain there. Learn to live another down, go down, fall down, do something. But that is an element of his game that is really, really strong. And I hope that he also views that as a strong part of his game too. And that's his legs.
If he, of course, learns how to slide. I mean, I don't know if I could go through another season where we lose him for half of a year. But let me ask you about the skill position players now. Given what we know about what Brian Daboll ran up in Buffalo, and we're going to, as we record this, there's no offensive coordinator. There should be an offensive coordinator named by the end of this week, I would think. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be primarily, I think, Daboll's system. And it's going to maybe have some tweaks based on who he hires. So that said, when you look at the skill position players now, obviously the offensive line, we know they've got to redo that unit. But do they have what they need, you think, to run some of these basic concepts? I know, there's some questions about tight end, but, could you see a scenario, for example, of Evan Ingram coming back, which I know is going to horrify some Giant fans, but given, Ingram's talented, and I don't think people have really appreciated or used him properly in their offenses. But so, just let's start there. Let's start with tight ends. Do you think they have what they need? And then let's go to the receivers and the running backs. Do they have the skill position players to make this system hum?
I think tight ends, if Kyle Rudolph was more productive this year, and if he was more productive in the receiving game, because he was a very sound blocker. And, Kyle Rudolph, you take away the price tag that he had this year, as a pass blocker. I mean, he actually helped out Nate Solder a lot. Think of that 51-yard touchdown to John Ross, the max protect 12 personnel. John Ross catches that touchdown pass against the Saints. I mean, Kyle Rudolph was helping Nate Solder on that right side, kind of clamping down that line, allows Daniel Jones to kind of step up. But Rudolph, if you're going to be paying a guy that much money, you need him to be a little bit more productive in the receiving game. And then with Evan Ingram, I feel like you need that tight end that is more than just a willing blocker. We've been saying for years that Evan Ingram is a willing blocker. Well, is he good? I mean, he's maybe not bad, but is he a good blocker, and is he an advantage? But he can be an advantage when we're talking about those crossing routes. What Evan Ingram can do is he can run a straight line very, very well, and he's a fast player. So can he run those crossing routes? So certainly, if this wasn't a new regime, let's just say, then I think Evan Ingram maybe a stronger chance that he's back. But there's a lot of Senior Bowl guys that I'm loving at tight end, like Trey McBride, Colorado State, Jake Ferguson. They still do have Caden Smith, which I 100%. I am kind of going into next season thinking that Caden Smith is going to be tight end 1. So I think tight end is actually the position that they need to do the most work on. So then let's go to wide receiver. Kenny Golladay, Patty. I mean, how is it bad in my brain that I'm just thinking it's so simple to just throw a ball up to Kenny Golladay if he has a one-on-one situation?
No, You're spot on.
It's sometimes just as simple as that, and letting your playmakers go up and make a play. Not everything needs to be so complicated where you need to have the best scheme and you need to have the best play call and the coaches need to outcoach the other team. Sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, we got Kenny Golladay. He's 6'3". This corner he's going up against is 5'11". He's got a 20-plus pound weight advantage on him. Let's throw up a football when he has this wide catch radius, and then we can create big plays that way. And that's an element of the offense that was really, really missing this year. And there was a little bit of a rumor that I heard that Tyke Tolbert did not like back shoulder throws. And that's kind of how Kenny Golladay makes his money. Those back shoulder, throws that, it's almost like you can't even defeat it in the NFL today. So Tyke Tolbert not coming back as the wide receiver coach for the Giants. So you have Golladay, and Slayton is still under his rookie contract, which big play Slay as a guy that can run down the field and a guy that can stretch the field, which I think Dable wants to do. I think some of the rest of the wide receivers may be TBD with not really knowing Sterling Shepard's issue, and also Kadarius Toney. How fun can Kadarius Toney be in that slot and in the outside, just being that reliable target in the intermediate part of the field, while also having the yards after the catch element. I think Dable's going to have a lot of fun with Toney. And then running backs, Saquon Barkley, quite an interesting discussion. If there is a coach that I do trust to tap into what Saquon can be, it is Dable. And that may not necessarily be dependent on volume, but it's going to be dependent on efficiency. And that's how Dable really uses the running game. He's not going to force feed the running game, but it's going to be based on efficiency. And I trust that this offense overall, including the running game, will be more efficient.
Interestingly enough, do you think Saquon Barkley is going to be on this roster? I know I had this discussion at the presser on Monday, and I was talking with a colleague, and he said, look, I'd be surprised if Saquon is on the roster to start the season. I would definitely be surprised if he is on the roster to end the season. And he was of the opinion that the Giants could maybe look to move him and get a couple of, maybe mid-round draft picks. I think they're going to keep Saquon. I mean, even though, we've seen the running game function okay without Saquon, he still brings that added element, as a receiver. And he has the talent. It's just the injury situation. But, I mean, do you think that he's going to make it through the season healthy, number one? And number two, will he remain on the season, or will he maybe be traded?
I really do think he is going to be traded. I really do think now that's what kind of the heart thinks. And Saquon is a great guy. I do not dislike him as a player. I love him as a player, but I do think just where Saquon Barkley is in his career, he's approaching where we're going to possibly need to negotiate a contract. I do not think that the Giants should be paying a lot of money for a running back, especially since, they're in a certain interesting cap situation right now that may take 1 or 2 years to fully kind of get out of. They're in a position where we should be building from the draft as well. And the Buffalo Bills kind of have a track record of drafting running backs from the 3rd round and on. And again, being efficient in the running game, which I find that's the key in the NFL today. You want your passing game to kind of be the thing that's driving the offense, and your rushing. And this is my opinion. And the rushing game is there from an efficiency standpoint to kind of keep the offense on schedule and also to diversify the offense as well. I do not think Saquon Barkley is on the team next year. Just looking at what Joe Schoen has done, or what Joe Schoen has been a part of with the Buffalo Bills, not what he's done, but what he's been a part of with the Buffalo Bills, and knowing that he was not drafted by this regime and knowing that he has, his contract is expiring, Saquon Barkley's, I don't think he's on the team.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, if you do a lot of driving, you need to know about the Get Upside app, which offers savings every time you fill up at the pump. Download the free Get Upside app today and use promo code Touchdown when you sign up for your account to get at least 25 cents per gallon or more back on your first fill up at participating gas stations. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or get an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. So download the free Get Upside app today to start your savings, and don't forget to use that promo code Touchdown to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first fill up. Now, one last question before we move off the offense, and I want to get back to the offensive line here. You've been down there in Mobile watching the practices, what's your feeling as far as the type of offensive line they want to run? Is it going to be more of a zone blocking? Is it going to be more of a power gap? What are you picking up down there?
I think it's going to be a mix, and Dable really did do a mix. And there are probably some other people that are a little bit more qualified to talk about it than me, but I do think it is going to be a mix. And one of the things that, with Bobby Johnson coming in this week as the offensive line coach, one of the things that he talked about in some interviews is, especially in the passing game, not really doing a lot of vertical sets for tackles, which that's something, in my brain, looking at NFL teams, almost all those tackles you see, they're doing kick step, and they're going back. Guards, even same thing. You're working to get depth. You're working to get depth, so possibly a quarterback can step up in the pocket. But it looks like they may try in the passing game and with pass blocking to just kind of hold strong up front. And that, you're still going to have your tackles that do their kick steps and their vertical steps, but maybe they're not going to be going as deep. Maybe they're not going to be going as, back in the backfield and in depth like that. So I think it's going to be a mix in the running game, versatile, which if Saquon Barkley's here, I think he can benefit from an outside zone kind of rushing scheme where Saquon Barkley's a kind of running back that likes to spend a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage. So if you let him go outside, it gives him more time to diagnose what's in front of him. And then boom, maybe he can be more efficient that way instead of just asking him to run in a straight line where he can get stuck behind blockers and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited to see what we're going to be doing with offensive line in the draft, because there are a lot of good offensive linemen here at the Senior Bowl, particularly interior offensive linemen. I know Zion Johnson is a name that is really circulating around right now, Boston College, where that may be a guy where we get to day 2 and we get to our round 2 pick where, maybe we go tackle an edge, or maybe we trade back with one of those picks where we may be banging the table for Zion Johnson to get in here and be a pretty good guard to kind of start off for us.
Yeah, and then guard's definitely a position it looks like they're going to need, because I don't see Will Hernandez coming back, and obviously I think they can upgrade from Matt Skura. So, all right, Justin, let us turn our attention now to the defense. Now, as we record this, word had come out just a little while ago that it looks like Kevin O'Connell, the Rams offensive coordinator, is going to get the head coaching job in Minnesota, which Patrick Graham was in the running for. So that sounds like Patrick Graham is coming back. I'm disappointed for Patrick Graham, good guy, but I'm kind of selfishly happy he's coming back, because I suspect, and I had done a Cap article that published a few days ago, that the Giants are going to have to tweak that defense. And even though that, with Patrick Graham coming back, you're still looking at, third year in the system, but there's going to be some pieces that maybe won't be there. I'm thinking James Bradbury might not be there. Will Logan Ryan be there? I don't know. I didn't have him in my math, but certainly I can make a case for him not being there. Who knows if Blake Martinez is going to be healthy? So that said, you look at the defense, the state of the defense, not bad last year, but not as good as they were the first year. What does that unit need, and do you see the return of Patrick Graham as an advantage?
Yes, I absolutely do see the return of Graham being an advantage, and here's why. Let's use Wink Martindale as an example. I would love Wink Martindale as a defense coordinator. Do not get me wrong, but he was faced with a little bit of adversity this year with the Ravens, and now a lot, because they did have a lot of injuries, but the defense was not the same. And I think they have a type of player in Baltimore. Patrick Graham, I don't necessarily think he has a type of player. Number one, because I don't think he's had his choice. I don't know if he's necessarily had his choice of like his type of player. You especially look at the edge room the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, the edge room was virtually non-existent. Azeez Ojulari being the most consistent presence at edge in 2021 in terms of producing sacks. But outside of that, he has had to work with a non-existent edge room, a secondary that has been kind of banged up throughout 2 years, 2020 specifically, when you had Isaac Yadam, who was starting at cornerback 2, really doing a good job of playing coverages that are helping him on that side. And then James Bradbury is kind of more or less on that island taking care of his business. But he's had to adjust. This year. He wanted to run more man coverage. He wanted to blitz. Against the Broncos, that blitz rate was over 40%, which was the most in the NFL after week 1. But Teddy Bridgewater still had over 3 seconds to throw the ball. And that's not a winning formula. So that's what he wanted. So then he had to adjust again to playing more man coverage and while still playing more too high versus last year, they played a lot of single high. So Patrick Graham is a head coach that can adjust, or is a defensive coordinator that can adjust. And I like that because no matter what happens, if there's injuries, if there's personnel issues, this is a guy that can somehow make it work. And he's made it work. Has it been perfect? No. Has the last 2 minutes of the first half been bad? And have we allowed a lot of points? Absolutely. But Patrick Graham is a guy that can adjust. And I like that in a coach where, again, he's not stuck in his ways.
And he's keeping Jerome Henderson, the defensive backs coach,
yes.
which I love that decision too.
Yes.
I mean, Henderson did I think one of the most underrated jobs on the coaching staff last year, given all the COVID and injury situations he had to deal with. He had that unit pretty much playing up to snuff. Now, you look at the personnel, up front, I think they might, Austin Johnson, I think, is a free agent. So they'll have Leonard Williams. They're going to have Dexter Lawrence, who, by the way, we talk about Daniel Jones and the 50-year option. Dexter Lawrence's option year, they've got to decide on that as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Which a lot of people aren't talking about.
No,
they really need to. I don't think they'll pick that up either. But so you're probably going to need another defensive lineman. At the linebacker position, you don't know if Blake. I think they bring Blake back. I think they're going to restructure him, but I think you got to get him a second guy. Tate Crowder was okay. Jalen Smith, I think, was okay, but you need a really good second option there in case Blake isn't good to go. The edge, you mentioned Azeez Ojulari. Now, I don't know, are they going to bring back Lorenzo Carter? Would you bring back Lorenzo Carter, given that Lorenzo Carter didn't really come on until the last 4 games of the season?
Let's just say, hypothetically, we draft 2 edge rushers this year, which I don't think is unrealistic. You could take an edge rusher in the first round, which I would be very much for. And then you could take an edge rusher, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. And then BPA on day 2 and 3. So you bring back Lorenzo Carter, then you're talking about a situation where either Carter is going to have to be cut. You're talking about possibly Ellerson Smith or Quincy Roche. So at this point, Ellerson Smith is on the roster for the next few years. Quincy Roche is on the roster for the next few years. I think it makes the most sense just to kind of let Carter walk. I'm going to give you a hot take right now, Patty. I don't think Ellerson Smith is on the team next year.
Ooh, I was going to ask you about that too.
Because he was a project pick to begin with the Giants, where he didn't play in the 2020 college season.
Right.
He opted out. And
no, he didn't opt out. His season was canceled.
Yes, his season was canceled
because of COVID.
Yes. So excuse me on that, but he did not play the 2020 season. And in that 2020 season, he had to bulk up, where he was very, very light the last time that we were able to kind of turn on tape and see him play. And his role in this year was just kind of being a filler man when guys were running stunts, when that defense was running stunts. So I don't think he's on the team. I think the Giants are looking to kind of add some edge help this offseason. And I think there's a track record for the Buffalo Bills where Joe Schoen is that, they've drafted defensive linemen and edge rushers in the first 3 rounds in a lot of their drafts. Ed Oliver was a 1st-round pick. AJ Epineza was a 2nd-round pick. Carlos Basham, Gregory Rousseau was a 1st-round pick as well. So there's a track record there with Buffalo that they really do prioritize defensive linemen and edge rushers in the first 3 rounds. So I wouldn't be surprised if multiple guys are added there, and then we may have a surprise camp cut.
Yeah, and not something really that the Giants have prioritized a whole lot, until last year. I mean, you can make the case obviously with Ojulari, but otherwise pass rushers have been in the 3rd round, which I don't get. I don't understand that at all. I mean,
you see
O'Shane
the trends.
Ximenez hasn't worked out. I mean, I don't get what they're thinking there. But it's interesting. You mentioned Ellerson Smith. When I last saw him walking off the field at practice. And I was kind of alarmed at how slender he looked. And I thought to myself, my gosh, how's this kid going to hold up? And it's interesting because in speaking with people, they were of the opinion that he would have been better off returning to school for an extra year to work with Bryce Popp, who had been his position coach. And he, of course, decided to come out. And I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know what they have in him. There's just not enough of a sample size. And I'm not sure where he fits in. Is he an outside linebacker, or should he be a defensive end? Is he going to bulk up to be able to hold down at defensive end? I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I do think like right now we did our edge review on Talking Giants, and I'm like, you know what? Just kind of going through the different possibilities of who they could add. I would rather have a guy like Quincy Roche than Ellerson Smith. Like I
Yeah.
think 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a good draft class, I think, for edge rushers, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Even
Yeah,
the Senior Bowl too. There's a lot of good day
mhm.
two picks that you could possibly have. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Where else, before we get to the Senior Bowl topic, where else on the Giants defense would you say you're legitimately concerned about?
Yeah, we talked about interior linebacker. I
Uh-huh.
am very concerned if we cut James Bradbury. I do not
Hmm.
want to cut James Bradbury. I'm kind of selfishly here on like I would be okay if we cut Blake Martinez, but I don't want to. But they do have to make tough decisions with this cap space. I get it, but I would rather lose Blake Martinez than James Bradbury. I know James Bradbury didn't have the type of year that he had in 2020, but it was still a good year. Where I think if James Bradbury had the type of year that he had this year, like if he had his 2021 season in 2020, I think Giants fans are like, okay, like that's the player that he was in Carolina. But because he had this insane, like top 5 cornerback all pro season, then we went into the expectations that he should be doing that again. And it didn't quite work out that way. So I am concerned in a passing league. I am concerned if we lose James Bradbury. And, I have a little, shell shock as a Giants fan about, if we want to draft a cornerback like in round 1. I'm like, well, that hasn't really worked out for us the last few times. It's almost like Aaron Robinson and Darnay Holmes in the 3rd round are like better picks than Eli Apple and DeAndre Baker. But so that's where I am right now with in terms of if there's a need and they decide to cut James Bradbury. I mean, cornerback 1 is like top priority. Like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But also interior defensive lineman. You mentioned Dexter Lawrence, possibly him not picking up his 5th-year option. Is Leonard Williams on the team after 2022? That's also a valid question. I would hope that he is. I mean, this is a guy that we signed for a long time, and I hope he kind of gets back to that 2020 kind of player that he was. But Austin Johnson expiring deal. Danny Shelton did not work out on a 1-year deal. But there's a lot of guys at the Senior Bowl, including Neil Farrell Jr., Devontae Wyatt from Georgia, John Ridgeway from Arkansas, who could possibly be a day 3 pick. I mean, there's a lot of interior defensive linemen in this at the Senior Bowl right now, where I'm at, and then also in this draft class that could be very promising. Giants have been known just as an organization to be like defensive tackle you, as my buddy Snacks likes to say. And Joe Shane also has the track record when he was with the Bills of drafting those interior guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to your point about James Bradbury, it's interesting. I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today, and I said, well, if they cut James Bradbury, could they potentially move Aaron Robinson outside? Now I know Aaron Robinson was primarily a slot guy in college, and we were having we were going through these different scenarios, and we're saying, well, if they move him to the outside, then who's your slot guy? And it was like Julian Love. I said, well, okay, well, where do you put Darnay Holmes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Darnay becomes your dime back. And I said, well, what happens if Logan Ryan isn't on this team? Then who's your other safety? Well, you draft a safety. So many what ifs like that. I mean, exactly.
Makes your head spin. Oh my gosh.
It really does.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it's interesting because we did have this conversation and we questioned whether or not Patrick Graham could play the type of defense he wants to play if James Bradbury is not on this team. But look, Justin, I got to be honest with you. James Bradbury, I think, has either the number 1 or the number 2 highest cap hit. The Giants are cap heavy in the top 5. Normally we look at the top 10. The top 5 account for 47.1% of the cap.
Oh
you
gosh.
Can't have that.
No.
You've got to work. They've got to straighten that out. I mean, and I'm sure they will. But this is where the tough decisions come in, like we were talking about, and that's why I question if James Bradbury is going to be one of those tough decisions.
Yeah, and to circle back, we can bring Patrick Graham back in the mix. If there is a defensive coordinator that I do trust that can work around it, it 100% is Patrick Graham. And Adoree, let's also not act like Adoree Jackson is he's just a guy that's here. Adoree Jackson had a very, very good year. And I think he really did benefit from going, against wide receiver 2s, whereas James Bradbury was going up against some pretty good wide receiver number 1s this year. Like if you actually look at the list, it's like he faced a lot of good wide receivers, but Adoree Jackson was probably this defense is MVP this year. And I don't think that's a hot take. Like he was this defense's best player. So I don't know if he can project a CB1, but he's also here. And again, I trust Patrick Graham to adjust if tough decisions need to be made.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, football season might be winding down, but BetOnline has way more stuff to bet on this season. Scores, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired head coach is going to land. BetOnline is the #1 spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. So visit them today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, this episode is brought to you in part by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts your car is going to need. Why endure the pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait times for parts to be shipped from a supplier to the store and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts that their warehouse happens to carry? With Rock Auto, you don't have to go through any of that. You can skip all that nonsense and save money while you get what you want and what you need. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They offer competitive pricing on thousands of parts for every make, model, and manufacturer, and it's easy to find on their website. So go visit rockauto.com today and get what you need for your car or truck. And don't forget to write down Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. Amazing selections, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, let's talk now about the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
I think you're 2 days in now as we record this. And I know today, Wednesday was a rainy day. I don't know if you got to see the entire practice. I know tomorrow, I think they're moving practice inside, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we may try to sneak in, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think anybody's going to be allowed to see. But we did get 2 good days of practice. Yes.
Okay, so tell us, some of the names that have stuck out that you think might be Giants.
I want to start off at the top with somebody. Quarterback, taking a quarterback is controversial this year, but I want to start off with
they need a backup.
Following, and even if they take a guy in like maybe the first round, and I'm the guy, Patty, where if you're going to draft a quarterback, draft them to make them the guy. Mm-hmm. I think you can get kind of good value for backup guys for 1 or 2 years, and then you move on, maybe find somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not really for, what the Giants did with like a Davis Webb or a Ryan Nassib. I mean, Ryan Nassib, maybe you can understand because Eli was in the prime of his career. Anyway, if you're going to draft a quarterback, you think that he can be the guy. That's my kind of mentality behind it. So I want to talk about Malik Willis. Malik Willis is kind of the talk of the Senior Bowl right now, where he was already the most exciting QB prospect of this draft class, where I think a guy like Kenny Pickett is a little bit more safe, but Malik Willis has his flaws. Mm-hmm. But talk about Josh Allen with the improvisation, throwing from the different arm angles, the arm strength, the mobility, the ability to run with the ball. All of those things Malik Willis has, and he has those things like you can't teach. And he has those things where you look at the X factors of quarterbacks in the NFL. You look at Aaron Rodgers, you look at Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, you look at these guys, Kyler Murray, you look at these guys, and they have those traits of the ability to move around, move the pocket, arm strength, improvisation, different arm angle throws. And Malik Willis has that. But the things that he needed to show this week in Mobile, Alabama, wasn't the magic, because you don't get a chance to see the magic when you're in a team drill. It's not designed for that. There's no rushers that are coming after you. These drills aren't designed for you to run with the ball. These drills are designed for you to stay in the pocket and deliver a clean ball that's on target. And you're making the correct read in a given play. So Malik Willis has done it. And day 1, he looked good. Day 2, I think he looked even better. And one of the critiques that he had was Malik Willis is only a fastball thrower. He only throws at one speed. He's put some really nice touch on some throws the last 2 days. So, Patty, I'm starting to think about it. I'm at the stage where I'm a little flirtatious with Malik Willis right now, where I'm not in, but I'm thinking about it. I'm intrigued. Yeah. And I am very okay if the Giants rock and roll. I think they're going to rock and roll with Daniel Jones this year, no matter what. Right. I don't think they're going to trade him. They're not going to cut him. I don't think they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. But again, I want Joe Schoen, if he sees that there's a franchise quarterback there and he has an opportunity to take him, I kind of want him to take him. I really do. So that's where I'm at. Malik Willis is like probably the biggest talking point right now from the Senior Bowl. But there's a lot of good edge rushers, like Jermaine Johnson is a guy that maybe if we trade back, we can certainly get, or in the 2nd round if he does fall. Arnold Ebiketie is an edge rusher. I love a lot of these edge rushers and interior defensive linemen at the Senior Bowl. Zion Johnson, like I mentioned, for Boston College. There's some other good interior offensive linemen as well. Interior defensive line. Otito Ogunbi. This is tough. Ogbonia from UCLA. He has been a stud in individual drills the last 2 days, and I think he could be a guy that could be 3rd round and on. And then John Ridgeway from Arkansas is probably a day 3 pick, where we're looking to replace Dalvin Tomlinson, right? We're still looking for that nose tackle that can hold down in the middle. John Ridgeway he has one move, and it's a bull rush, and he moves people. So that could be a day 3 pick, day 3 guy as well. So I'm most excited about the interior defensive line, interior offensive line right now at the Senior Bowl, and looking at these quarterbacks, especially Malik Willis.
Give me a name or two that maybe we weren't talking about last week, but is really creating some buzz.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna give you an edge rusher. His name is Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati. There's a right tackle from Minnesota. He's 387 pounds. He's like 6'7", 387 pounds. And he doesn't even look like he's that big. But Myjai Sanders had a viral, what I would consider to be like a viral rep of started off with the spin move, but then turned it into a bull rush. And Myjai Sanders is pretty small. He's got to be like 240 pounds. Then I would say for maybe an edge rusher that's somewhat small, then put this 387-pound tackle on his rear end. And a lot of people were not kind of talking about him. So he had some flashy reps. Also, Trey McBride out of Colorado State, Jake Ferguson are 2 tight ends that I know some people were talking about, but I have a feeling Trey McBride is going to be this tight end where, we're talking about, is he a 2nd rounder? Could you maybe take him in the back end of the 1st? I think we're going to be talking about Trey McBride as there's going to be 31 NFL teams that are going to be like, well, damn, this is a tight end that we could have gotten and we could have taken. And, like a George Kittle in the 5th round. How did that guy ever fall to the 5th round? I have a feeling that even though McBride probably going to be taken in the 2nd round, there's probably going to be still 31 other teams that are kicking themselves that they didn't find a way to get him.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what about guys who we were talking about who maybe aren't, maybe you're showing that they were a little overrated?
Yeah. Some of the quarterbacks have been a little disappointing. I know Carson Strong has not looked very good. Kenny Pickett has been okay. I wanted to see more out of Kenny Pickett, and I've been kind of keeping my eyes on the quarterbacks certainly a lot. So Kenny Pickett is a guy that's been okay, and I think the ceiling, kind of like that ceiling for him, is almost like Kirk Cousins. And I don't think there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but you look at kind of what's working in the National Football League right now, and maybe Kirk Cousins isn't it. That's not what's fully working for these teams that are winding up in the playing in their conference championships. So Kenny Pickett has been a guy that I thought that he would be up there with Malik Willis, but Malik Willis has kind of been blowing the pack away.
What are you hearing as far as rumors? Have you been observing maybe Giant scouts going over to talk to guys? Are you hearing anything at this point?
I'm in the stands. So I did see Joe Schoen, Chris Pettit, and what I believed to be Tim McDonald. I can't. I know it was Chris Pettit because I recognize his face.
Timmy's down there. I know he's down there.
Good for me. That makes me feel really good. Yeah. So those 3 guys were down there. I heard Kevin Abrams might be down here, but I didn't see him on the field.
He is too. Yeah.
I didn't see him on the field. So, but it's good. It's good to see that we do have Giants brass down here, even though I know Brian Dable's still putting together his coaching staff. I will. So here's what I will say. I'm not commenting on the whole, Brian Flores situation, but as that was breaking, I saw Joe Shane was on the phone a lot. So I'm not hearing anything because, obviously I'm a fan in the stands. I'm watching the players. I don't have kind of like the connections with like calling front office people. But, when all that stuff is kind of going down, I'm like, why is Joe Shane on the phone so much? And then I checked my phone. I'm like, oh, this is happening right now. So I think he might be dealing with that. So there you go. That's the inside information that Joe Shane was kind of walking in the end zone and pacing and taking a lot of phone calls while guys were practicing.
So he has, so nobody that you've seen them talking to, or, have you heard anything? I know the media breakfast was Wednesday morning. I mean, anybody say, yes, I met with the Giants? And I know it doesn't mean anything right now, but still it's interesting to gather that.
Chris Pettit was talking with Joe Douglas. They were just having a conversation. So there you go. Pat, I'm sorry. I don't have anything juicy for you.
Okay. No, I thought I would ask. I mean, sometimes, and again, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. I mean, obviously you want to do due diligence, but you never know. I mean, sometimes if you find out that the Giants were talking to a player at the Senior Bowl, and then they're talking to that same guy again at the Combine, and then they're going to his pro day, and then they're bringing him in, and then you've got a trail now. So I just was wondering if there was anything that kind of jumped out at you, in terms of your observations. Yeah. I mean, final question for you from the Senior Bowl. I mean, just overall, and I don't know if you're planning on staying for the game on Sunday. I know a lot of people just go for the practices and then they leave, but, has anything just kind of really made you say, wow, I just wasn't expecting that, whether it be a position group or it's just something that happened, a player performance?
I was not expecting the kind of wide receiver and cornerback battles to be so lopsided. It's the cornerback talent in this Senior Bowl pool. So, if you're a fan who's listening to this, look at the cornerback crop of what's going on at Senior Bowl right now. Those guys are a little bit more talented and they've had quite the advantage compared to the wide receivers. And a lot of these drills, I think they are kind of designed for, at least the wide receiver and cornerbacks. They're kind of designed for offense a little bit. You do have referees that are constantly throwing flags in there too. So that's an element that I'm sure that's in their head too. But I was not expecting the offensive lineman and the defensive lineman drills to be as even, because typically on the other side, you have those individual drills of offensive lineman versus defensive lineman. They're more favored towards defensive lineman, because if you got guys that are going one-on-one, well, typically you don't have all the space in the world to run around a guy, or, guards always have help from either the tackle or the center. So they're usually not realistic, but it has been so fun to see those guys battling. That's why I've been talking a lot about the edge guys and the defensive linemen, because those are the first 2 days. That's where I was really watching. The third day I was hoping to catch the cornerbacks and wide receivers, but that is now probably canceled. So I was not expecting those battles to be so even. And that has been really, really fun to watch these guys battle and these guys go to work these last 2 days, including even in the elements today, which I think these guys had a little bit of fun. It wasn't the most fun watching it, but they certainly had a little bit of fun, and there were guys that kind of took advantage of that opportunity.
Are you staying for the game?
I am not. A
lot of people don't.
I would, I don't make those decisions, but I would like to. I mean, it's a football game,
you catch it on TV too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will be doing that. I will be doing that. And also Mobile has some good food, has some good barbecue, has some good people. And, I'd like to stay for a couple more days, but
probably headed out. I guess
I'll be headed home to the great state of New Jersey, the greatest state in the world.
Oh, okay. So you're a Jersey boy, just like I live in Jersey too. So I thought you were down in Florida with Bobby.
No. We're trying to convince him to move up. He'll never move up.
I don't know if New Jersey's ready for Bobby.
No, it's such a good point. And
I love him. Don't get me wrong. I love Bobby. Bobby, if you're watching, I love you.
That's probably the best defense as to why Bobby should stay in Florida, because New Jersey's not ready for him.
Oh my goodness. Well, Justin, listen, this was great. I'm so happy you had the time to come on the show with me, and especially, down there, lots of stuff to do, I'm sure. And I appreciate all the insight. This was great. I love talking ball with you guys, and I'm sure we'll do it again at some point, whether it be my show, your show, whatever. I mean, you got my email, so always feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Anytime you want to, hey, if you want to get into the analytics side of things, I'm a big numbers guy. I love bringing in that.
I might take you up on that because I like that stuff too.
Please
definitely.
So, I mean,
just opened a can of worms, Justin.
I go from next gen stats to Sharp Football Stats. I know a lot of people are anti PFF. I use them a little bit out of all the sites that I use. I probably use them less. Pro Football Reference. I love it. So anytime you want to bring me on, and let's collaborate on that. And Patty, thank you so much.
Oh, definitely. We'll have to do a numbers show. Yes. You got it. That's a date, my friend. All right. Thank you so much. That's Justin Pennick. He is one half of the Talking Giants duo with Bobby Skinner. Great guy. Check out their podcast, everybody. They're on YouTube. They're on wherever you can find podcasts, you'll find them. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants your first listen of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And don't forget, folks, we're going live tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. We're going to probably go for about an hour and a half. That's right. I'm going live. I'm getting braver, Justin, in my old age.
I love it.
So we're going to have that show. The Entertainer is going to join me, and we'll take your questions. We'll talk Giants, and we'll send you into the weekend with no football. Yeah, I know the Pro Bowl's coming up, but who cares? But as far as I'm concerned, there's no football. But we'll send you into the weekend, and then we'll be right back at it on Monday. So for Justin Pennick, I am Patricia Traina. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you tomorrow morning live, 11 a.m.